Stuttering Stan takes a stand. Remember, the early bird gets the worm, Stanley. But I'm a squirrel, Mom. Why should I care about what birds do? There's a lesson to be learned from birds, Stanley. This will be your first winter on your own, so you need a head start to store as many nuts as you can. Stanley assured his mother that he would store plenty of food for the winter, but he already had enough to last him through spring. You see, Stanley had been introduced to the wonderful world of chocolate when a truck carrying candy bars accidentally dropped several large boxes of them. Stanley never told anyone about his discovery and hid his treasured chocolates in an old abandoned oak tree. Stanley thought his secret was safe, until a chipmunk named Earl discovered his secret. "Hello, Stuttering Stan," said Earl. "I haven't seen you in a while. Can't you see I'm busy, Earl? You don't look busy. Besides, I'm just in the neighborhood, and I thought I would stop by and say hi, buddy." "We're not buddies. You stole at least 4 nuts from me the last time I saw you. Those were mine, Earl." "Hey, you know the rules of engagement. The first one that grabs the nut keeps the nut," said Earl, laughing. "And I've stored away enough of them to last me 10 winters. "Well, that's great, Earl. Come on, what gives? Since when do squirrels not have an interest in nuts? What are you up to, Stuttering Stan?" "What do you mean? I've been searching for nuts, too," said Stanley sheepishly. "Well, it hasn't been around here, or I would have seen you. Hey, what is that on your chin, Stuttering Stan?" "Oh, it's nothing." As Stanley turned around to lick chocolate off his chin, Earl saw a stack of Stanley's candy bars lying next to the old abandoned oak tree. "Oh, my," said Earl. "You have chocolate. I haven't had chocolate since the Mertlin kid spilled his Halloween candy 2 years ago. May I have some, Stuttering Stan?" "It's mine, Earl." "Yeah, but won't you share some of it with me?" "Why should I do that? All you ever do is make fun of me." "Come on. I'm only joking. I don't mean anything by it." At that moment, Earl and Stanley both froze in their tracks as a frightening and familiar voice echoed directly above them. "I'll just take the candy off both your hands," snarled Raker. Raker was a mean and nasty raccoon that nobody ever dared to mess with. Legend had it that Raker had lost his right eye after starting a fight with a rattlesnake named Chopper. Raker wore an eye patch over that eye and vowed to hurt anyone who made pirate jokes at his expense. "I hope you know, Stuttering Stan, that too much chocolate can cause cavities," said Raker sarcastically. Raker proceeded to shove the entire stack of candy bars into his mouth. After taking his last bite, he let out a thunderous burp, then laughed heartily as he walked away. "Well, you sure did stand up for yourself, Stuttering Stan. Raker just took your candy and laughed right in your face. Why didn't you say something to him?" asked Earl. "I didn't see you doing anything to stop him, Earl. Besides, I want to live to see another day." "Hey, it wasn't my chocolate he took. I tell you what, Stuttering Stan, let's forget about Raker. Just get us some more of your candy." "That was all I had left." "Are you sure, Stuttering Stan? Where did you get it from, anyway?" "I bought it from the grocery store." "Do you really expect me to believe a story like that?" "I promise I won't tell anyone if you let me in on your little secret." "Look, Earl, I don't have any more candy, and I just want to be alone right now." Earl shook his head at Stanley and walked away. "That's okay, Stuttering Stan," said Earl from afar. "If you won't share your candy with me, I'll tell everyone I know about it. Then let's see if you get to enjoy it." Stanley expected that Earl would tell everyone about his candy, so his saying he would was no surprise. But before Earl even had the chance to spread the news, Raker had bragged about eating Stanley's candy to every animal in the neighborhood. The word was out. Stanley knew that he would have to hide his candy, or he would never be able to enjoy it. When Stanley snuck out of his neighborhood later that night, he took enough chocolates to last him for a few days. He hid the rest of his candy in a place he knew nobody would ever look. The next couple of days were hard on Stanley. He was lonely and felt like he didn't have a friend in the world. Stanley knew in his heart that he wasn't a stingy squirrel. He just didn't feel it was right to share his candy with those who made fun of him. The next day, while taking a nap in a park, Stanley was awakened by the sound of 2 blue jays fighting over breadcrumbs. Stanley smiled as he watched the blue jays, because it reminded him of competing for nuts back home with Earl. "What are you looking at?" asked a sweet little voice from behind a park bench. Stanley turned around and was surprised to see a little girl squirrel smiling at him. "Hello," said Stanley. "I'm just watching the birds." The little squirrel giggled and then asked Stanley, "Why do you talk like that?" "I have a problem saying words sometimes. Look, I'm not in the mood to be made fun of," said Stanley sharply. "I wasn't making fun of you. I think it's cute," said the little squirrel. "Everybody makes fun of the way I talk. What's so cute about that?" "Look, if it takes you a little longer to say what you want, there is nothing wrong with that. It's what you say to others that really matters." "Thank you for saying that," said Stanley. Stanley felt a couple of tears well up in his eyes, so he tried to take attention off himself as quickly as possible. "Boy, those blue jays sure can be pesky." The little squirrel just smiled and said, "Well, since you haven't introduced yourself, I'm Shelby." "Oh, sorry. I'm Stanley." "It's very nice to meet you, Stanley. I've never seen you before. Where are you from?" "I live in a little tree over on Walnut Street." "What brings you all the way over here?" As Stanley explained to Shelby why he had left home, all of the emotions he had kept inside for so long began to pour out. Stanley was angry, he was sad, he was many things, but above all, he was hurt. Shelby listened to Stanley as he went on and on about Earl teasing him and Raker taking his chocolate. When Stanley finished speaking, he had anticipated words of encouragement, but Shelby would have none of that. "Stanley, look at this," said Shelby as she lifted up her top lip. "Yeah, that's right. I lost my 2 front teeth, and not a day goes by that my 3 older brothers don't tease me about it. Does their teasing bother you?" "Stanley, I know my brothers love me. They only tease me to try and make me laugh along with them." But what about when it's someone like Raker? He doesn't care about me, or anyone for that matter." "I'm sure deep down Raker has a soft spot in his heart. Just try to talk to him." Stanley was far less confident about Raker's ability for reasoning than Shelby was, but he promised her he would try. Stanley decided it was time to go home. He thanked Shelby for her friendship and gave her the rest of the candy he had with him. Stanley asked Shelby to share the candy with her brothers. She promised she would. The next morning, Stanley had barely reached home when a voice yelled out, "Look who it is! Stuttering Stan is back." "Hello, Earl," said Stanley. "How are you?" "Well, I'm a lot better now that you're home." "Oh, yeah? Why's that?" asked Stanley. "Easy. You have candy, and we want some of it," said Earl, pointing over Stanley's shoulder. Stanley turned around and was shocked to see every animal in the neighborhood smiling at him. "Hello, everybody," said Stanley. "Hello, Stuttering Stan," replied all the animals in unison. "Well, it's true, I do have a lot of candy, and I'm happy to share it with all of you." "That's great, Stuttering Stan. I knew you had come to your senses," said Earl. "I didn't come to anything, Earl. A new friend taught me something recently about facing the things that bother me. I want to share my candy with everyone, but making fun of my stuttering hurts my feelings. Please don't do that anymore." Earl could see in Stanley's face how his teasing had really hurt him. Earl apologized for his behavior, and along with all the other animals he promised to stop teasing Stanley about his stuttering. As Stanley led Earl and the rest of the animals to his hidden chocolates, Earl was surprised when they arrived at the old abandoned oak tree. "When you left, we looked everywhere for your candy. Since this is the last place I saw you, it never occurred to me you would just leave the candy here," said Earl. "That's why I did it," said Stanley with a big grin on his face. Earl and Stanley laughed as they passed out candy to all the other animals. Everyone was having a fun time until Raker approached them and demanded to know what was going on. Stanley climbed down the old abandoned oak tree and handed Raker a candy bar. "What's this?" asked Raker. "It's for you, Raker. I'm sharing my candy with everyone," said Stanley. "Well, I'm not in the sharing mood," said Raker. Raker demanded that all the animals put their candy in a pile by his feet, and one by one they did. "Now, wait a minute, Raker. You can't have all the candy just for yourself," said Stanley. "Oh, really?" said Raker. Raker picked Stanley up by his hind legs and held him upside down. "I don't have to share because nobody here can make me," said Raker. Stanley wanted to stand up to Raker, but he couldn't bring himself to do so. Raker was just too big, and Stanley was scared of him. "Put him down, right now," said a soft little voice from the crowd of animals. "Who said that?" snarled Raker. "I did," said Shelby. In spite of hanging upside down in Raker's grasp, Stanley felt comforted by seeing Shelby again. Stanley smiled at Shelby, and she smiled back at him, and when Shelby smiled, it was obvious to everyone that she was missing her 2 front teeth. Raker laughed at Shelby and said, "What are you going to do if I don't let him go?" "Oh, don't tell me. You'll bite me with your gums, right?" Despite the advice Shelby gave him about being teased, Stanley could see that Raker had really hurt Shelby's feelings. It was at that moment that something changed inside Stanley. He no longer had a fear of standing up for what he believed in, even if it meant standing up to the likes of Raker. Stanley clawed his way out of Raker's grasp, and while doing so, he caused Raker's eye patch to pop off. What surprised everyone more than Stanley standing up to Raker was the fact that there wasn't anything wrong with Raker's eye after all. Raker had made the whole story up about challenging a rattlesnake to a fight, and his eye patch was simply a way of building his reputation as a bully. This big, bad raccoon shook in fear as Stanley said to never bully him or his friends again. As Raker walked away in tears, all the animals were laughing at him. But Stanley told them to stop teasing Raker and asked him to join them for candy. Everyone was surprised at Stanley's willingness to share with Raker, but Stanley reminded them that nobody likes to be teased and that each and every one of us needs friends.